All right, so first thing I'm going to do is just kind of cut through a little bit more about like how do you actually write SAQs? What is it that, you need to do to just like kill it on your SAQ? So, yep, Sylvia, I'm going to talk about ACE. So you are already a pro because you've already learned ACE, but maybe some of you guys don't use ACE. Anyone else use ACE, know what it is, already familiar with it? That's what I'm going to be teaching you today. No clue what ACE is. All right, so that's fine. So you're going to learn today. All right, so before we cut to that, just a quick background on the SAQs. You are going to have, there's going to actually be 4 questions on the exam. The first 2 are required. So whatever the first 2 questions say, you have to answer those 2 questions, and then you choose from between the next 2. So you choose one. So you'll actually write, you write 3 total SAQs, okay? So that's just a little background on that. How is the SAQ graded? Okay, well, first of all, it's 20% of your exam grade, which is crazy. And I think it gets overlooked a lot for, the DBQs, the LEQs, because those are like longer essays, but the LEQ is actually worth 15% and the SAQs are worth 20%. So even though they're short answers, definitely don't overlook this. This is an easy way that you can kind of boost up your grade. So, okay, so how are they graded? Let me just bullet point some stuff here. How are the SAQs graded? So the SAQs are graded on a binary system, on a binary scale. So that just means like if there's no rubric for it, there's no crazy rubric. It's just like, do you answer the question or do you not answer the question? So binary is like, ones and zeros. So you either get the point because you answered the question or you don't get the point. So there's no points that you can lose. You just kind of start at 0. And there are 9 total points that you can earn because you write 3 total SAQs, each worth 3 points. Okay, so there's a total of 9 points to earn here. It is so doable for you to earn more than 50% of the possible points here, because there's no crazy rubric. There's no, it's not too difficult to do this. The only problem is you just kind of have to know the answers, with the exception of the source questions. And I have one of those down here where it's kind of like a DBQ and they give you that. So all the questions will either be just like A, B, and C, like this. Here's 3 questions. Each question asks for one thing. So it'll ask you for like one cause, one change, one continuity, one effect, one thing like that. Or it'll be, here's a source and here's the A, B, and C questions based on that source. So it could be like, what is the point of view of this first author? What was the, what's the context? It might ask you something like that. The other option is, and we're not seeing a lot of these anymore. I'm not even sure if this will even be a thing, but sometimes it'll just have like A and B, and like B asks for 2 things. So A might be like, what was one similarity? B could say, what were 2 differences? So no matter what, every short answer set is going to ask for 3 things, and each of those 3 things has a point attached to it. So that's kind of the way that it breaks down. All right, so how do you actually answer these things? That is where ACE comes into play. So ACE was developed by history teachers to help you actually answer the questions and really get the points. You can even use it. It's not that different than what your, like some pieces of your LEQ kind of look like. This A stands for answer the question. This is kind of like your topic sentence. That's kind of like what it breaks down to. C is cite an example, right? So this would be like give some evidence. And E would be, yeah, Brennan, you will. I'll post the PDF of this so that you can use these practice questions and you can see what I did in the community. So if you're not taking notes, that's okay. All right, so E is explained. This is where you are just kind of like elaborating, right? This is like analysis type thing. So it's just like a mini paragraph, you know. In your LEQs, your paragraphs kind of look like ACE, but it's like ACE, CE. In your short answer question, it's just ACE, right? Topic, sentence, evidence, explain. And you're going to do this for parts A, B, and C. Okay. So it's not like you just do that and that's it. It's not like a point here, point here, point here. You have to do all three of these things to get 1 point. So for part A, you'll do all three. You'll write 3 sentences. For part B, you'll write 3 sentences. And for part C, you'll write 3 sentences. So short answer questions are 9 points. You're going to write 9 sentences for one short answer question, and that will earn you 3 points. Does that make sense? And then you'll write another short answer question, 9 sentences, and you'll earn three points on that one. A couple other things about the SAQs. You are limited by space. Okay, so you have a piece of paper, it has a box on it, and you have to keep your writing in that box. Nothing outside the box will get graded. Don't feel like you have to write, super tiny to fit everything in. You can write at your normal size. You're only writing 9 sentences in the box. All right. So they do that to really keep you like getting to the point. They don't want you going off into some, long drawn out answer because you just don't need to. Okay. So ACE. Any questions so far? Before we do practice questions, any other questions? General SAQ questions. It comes right after the multiple choice. Timing. You get about, I don't think they changed. Oh, you know what? Let me just see if they changed the time. Short answers, 3 questions, 40 minutes. So you actually get 40 minutes to answer all 3 questions. So, whoops. 40 divided by 3. Let me just do some math on my calculator. That would be about 13 minutes per question. Will all 9 parts be in that box? Yes, because you don't need a topic sentence. Okay, so let me just clarify. So this is not really a topic sentence. It's just kind of your actual answer to the question. So all of question 1 will go in one box. All of question 2 will go in one box. So that means A, B, and C. So I know that it gets kind of confusing because there's like A, B, and C, and then the ACE thing. So it will literally look like this. Insert, I don't know. Here's your box, okay? Whatever, let's pretend there's like a whole, imagine that this is an entire piece of paper. Here you go, here's your piece of paper. You'll have, this will be like question 1. You'll write part A, and you're going to answer it as 3 sentences. Answer the question, give evidence, explain. ACE. Then you've got part B, same thing. Right? Same thing. 3 sentences, same thing, 3 sentences. Okay, this one will give you 1 point. You do this, you get a point. You do this, you get a point. You do this, you get a point. And then question 2 will go in a new box. Make sense? Any more questions on just like basic, how exactly does this work? Any other SAQ questions so that you can absolutely kill it? I know like the teachers in the AP World Facebook group even were talking about how the short answer questions are just like, they seem to be really overlooked because it's such a huge part of the exam. And, realistically, it's not that, it shouldn't be too confusing, but like, this is a big, like, if you're thinking about what is it going to take for you to get a 4 or 5, like this is a really good thing for you to focus on and really practice because it's really worth a lot of points and it's really doable. The question was, I don't know if this sounds funny, but if we don't know, what do you do if you don't know the answer? I'm going to talk about that a little bit, about how to brainstorm answers. So let's write that here. What to do if you don't know the answer. Okay, so the first thing I would tell you is, sometimes the way the questions are worded can be confusing. And it's not that you don't know the answer. You might actually know the answer. It just might be kind of confusing as to how it's being asked. So for you to sort of like get to the answer, something that you can do is, one, just kind of ask yourself, all right, what's the time period? And like, what's going on in this time period? Like, take a step back from the question, look at what the time period is in the question, and then kind of run through like what's even happening in that time period. That might help you connect some development or concept or event to what the question's asking. Another thing that you can do is use SPICE. Are you familiar with SPICE? You can, let me know yes or no. I know that your themes are a little bit different for APUS, but basically SPICE stands for social, political, interaction with the environment, cultural, economic. So you can kind of run through SPICE. Like, if you really become very familiar with these categories, you can really help yourself like think through things. So if I'm trying to quickly think about, all right, what were some effects of the Civil War? I can use SPICE to just help me think of all the possible effects. So I might think of, okay, social, let's actually like break this down a little more. Social would be like gender, class, race, political. Yeah, Jasper, this is all very similar, but we're going to do questions on APUS. So you're welcome to hang out and learn about this to practice SAQs, but the content will be for APUSH. So for political, this is just like laws, government, rule, power, anything that, conflict, anything that has to do with politics in your, elections. Interaction with the environment would be like disease, demographics, migrations, things like that. Cultural would be religion, belief systems, technology, science. That's pretty much it. Economic would be anything having to do with jobs, trade, money, labor, anything like that. So if you really know those things, you really learn the SPICE themes. And I actually posted a video on my YouTube about SPICE. So if you need more practice with that, you can try that. But really learn SPICE. And one suggestion to like really learn it could be to follow a news source, any news outlet, magazine, TV, newspaper, anything, on Twitter or on Instagram, and go through some of the published stories, or go to their website and look at the headlines and see if you can just practice in your head, what SPICE theme would that headline fit under, right? And that will help you just quickly be able to categorize things. And so magpies, what does magpies stand for? It's probably the same thing. Yeah, I'm sure maybe it's like migrations. I don't know what it stands for. Something, geography, politics, something like that. So it doesn't matter. There's a lot of them. You can do SPICE. I think there's like pirates, Sprite. Yeah, Sprite's another one. Grapes. These are all just like, they're just acronyms. So if you use Sprite, then stick with Sprite. If you use magpies, stick with magpies. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be SPICE. But if you know categories like that, you can run through a time period or an effects, and just ask yourself, okay, if I'm thinking of effects after the Civil War, were there social effects? Were there political effects? Were there, disease or demographic effects or migrations? Were there cultural, economic, right? So it kind of helps you just think of all the possible things. So those are my suggestions for you. If you don't know the answer, the last suggestion I have is, don't leave it blank. Even if you're not sure, if you read the question and you're like, oh my God, I'm not sure. I think I know it. I'm not quite 100%. Take a shot. You're just going to do it. You're going to write as if you know it, right? Sometimes it's just like confidence is key. Okay, so you're going to try to come up with an answer, come up with your best answer that you possibly can put forward, and you're just going to write it. And you're going to do it in this way because you might be right, you know, or out of A, B, and C, maybe you totally nailed it on part B. Maybe A was, you know, you tried, but it was a little off. C was a little off, but like, boom, you know, part B got it. And there's a point for you. Question is, will these sessions be archived in the community? Always. Everything, all the replays are up. So I'll upload the replay tonight. All right, let's do some actual practice. All right, so this is everything you need to know about short answer. There we go. So here is a practice question. Let's actually just like go to the next page here. So this question was on the APUSH exam, I think 2 years ago. I believe 2 years ago. So this is like an actual College Board question that's similar to something you might see. You know, you can see that the way that they're set up, actually, this is just identify. For our purposes, just to like push us a little bit higher, I'm just going to change these to say explain, because the ones that you're going to see are not going to just say identify. They're going to say explain. So let's just keep that, you know, let's just put that. All right. So boom, boom, boom. All right, so you can see how A, B, and C, they're all asking about the same thing, right? They're all asking about what increased tensions between Great Britain and North America and then led to the revolution. And then it's literally just asking you to explain one, explain another, explain the third one. So the way that I would attack this question and how you guys are going to help me right now is to brainstorm. So the first thing you should do, you know, you've got 13 minutes per question. You know, so you have 13 minutes to write all 9 sentences for this. Spend the first minute or minute and a half brainstorming. The rest of the time will get a lot easier once you've brainstormed. So what do you think? What are some factors that increase tensions between this time period and those, how, you know, that would have then led to the revolution? All right, so we've got increased taxes. What else? Other factors that increase tensions and therefore help lead to the American Revolution. Remember, just stay in this time period. So 1763 to 1776. Okay, so this increased taxes would be the axe. Monarchy would be that kind of thing. End of salutary neglect would definitely be one. Enlightenment ideas. Yep, publications. Oh my God. Yeah, Boston Massacre. So some types of like confrontations. Were there any other confrontations besides? Yeah, there you go. Boston Massacre and Boston Tea Party. Salutary neglect is when the British kind of left the Americans alone, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Nah, we're actually going to tell you what to do." So that did make people very happy. Enlightenment ideas, publications. Any examples of those publications? What kinds of things were listed? Boston Gazette. Common Sense. Yeah, someone said Proclamation of 1763. So you've got like the like desired for westward expansion, like and then the blocking of that. Blocking SOS articles. What does that stand for? Blocking Western expansion. Sons of Liberty. Sons of Liberty articles. Okay. All right. So, you know, we didn't take that long to come up with that list, but this is what you would do. First thing is just kind of, you know, run through it and come up with a list of things. So then when you actually start writing, and I'll do some highlighting here. So the way that this will work is the A part of ACE, we'll call that, we'll highlight that in like yellow. But the way that you would start it would just literally be one factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and North America and its colonies, its North American colonies, was, whoa. And then we'll just choose one. Was the increased taxes through, yep. Yeah, so basically in the first sentence, you're just going to actually answer the question. So you want to restate what the question's asking to make sure that you're really going to answer it. So one factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and its North American colonies was the increased taxes through increased taxes to pay back, or we'll use that actually later. The increased taxes through the, are all of them together called the intolerable acts, or is it just certain ones that were called the intolerable acts? No, they weren't. Okay. Through, that was only after massacre. Okay, thank you. Through the different acts. I mean, even that is fine. Increased taxes. Or you could say the increased taxes levied on the colonies. Something like that. All right. So this this becomes, oh my God, I'm a mess here. Okay, so this becomes your, let's highlight that in yellow. That's the A part of your ACE. Okay. The second question, so there was one question that was in here about, are you allowed to abbreviate? Yeah. Yes. You know, like the thing is that you're not, it's not like you don't lose points for things. Okay. So if you abbreviate something and the reader knows what you're talking about, so, you know, just like that, common abbreviations, LBJ, JFK, things like that, then you're fine. If you abbreviate something and the reader has no idea what you're talking about, then they can't give you the point, right? So it's not like you're not allowed to abbreviate. You just like, you need to write so that the reader knows what you're saying. So don't make up abbreviations. All right. So in terms of the second question, in terms of C, you know, then you would say, like, for example, the, you know, like give me some examples of the acts that could include. Stamp Act. What else? Sugar Act. Townsend Acts, right? For example, the Stamp Act increased taxes on, what was it? Any like publications on stamps, coercive acts on publications, question mark, on paper without and legal documents. 50 commonly used forms of paper. All right, documents, increased taxes on paper and legal documents throughout the colonies. Okay, so in part 2, you just choose one, right? So in this case, you get to, you're saying they increased taxes, so pick one of the ways they did that and cite that. And then this would be your like C, right? This is your part, this is your C part of ACE. I'll make it green. And then the last thing is just like your explanation. So just kind of tie together the whole thing. So, you know, for example, the Stamp Act increased taxes, and then, you know, after the French and Indian War, the 7 Years War, called the 7 Years War, Britain's debt, forced Britain's massive debt, forced them to raise taxes on the colonists, but they, you know, the colonists didn't like that because they, without representation, right? Tax colonists, but they did not allow, they did not, you know, let allow the colonists to have any say in that, any representation, right? Something like that. So this would then be, here's blue, there's your explanation. So that's what it will look like. Exactly. So the third sentence is used to explain why the evidence fits in, right? So you're answering the question, you're giving an example, and then you're just showing like why, the question itself is going to focus on some kind of skill, cause, effect, change, continuity, whatever. Your third sentence is just kind of explaining that example. Why was that a change? Why was that a continuity? Why was that an effect? In this case, it's like this is all about causes, right? So it's kind of like you're saying this was a cause of the American Revolution. Here's an example of that cause. Here's why it happened, and here's why that caused this whole thing. Okay, let's do another one. We've got plenty more to choose from. So let's do, I don't know, Enlightenment ideas. So another factor that increased tensions and ultimately led to the American Revolution was the influence of Enlightenment ideas coming from Europe. Okay. For example, John Locke's natural rights of life, liberty, and property influenced the colonists to fight for their own rights. And then these influential like philosophers also these ideas also influenced the actual writing of the Constitution. All right, so lots of trouble spelling today. So this first one would be your first sentence. There's A, part of ACE. The second one would be your second sentence. There's the C. You're giving an example. Oops. And then the third one, you're explaining. All right. Questions so far? The time period is 1763 to 1776. So in this case, you can talk about the Enlightenment. John Locke doesn't have to have had these ideas in that time period, but in this time period, it's very influential for the colonists. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to do an example. So I'm going to ask you, the Constitution you couldn't talk about because the Constitution comes after 1776 and wouldn't be a factor that increased tensions, right? So this is really like causes of the revolution. The Constitution would be like more of an effect. So based on the things that we've done, so I did one for this, and then for this. So now I'm going to task you, and I'm going to even time you. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, because I think you can do it in 3 minutes or less. I want you to do the third one. So you write your own 3 sentences. Choose one of these things that I didn't do. All right. So you write your own. You're going to send it on the chat. I'm going to pull them over and we'll talk about them. All right. So, I won't put your name on it on this document. We'll just use it as another example. So, all right. So you got 3 minutes. Go. Choose any one of these. Type it in the chat so that you can, come up with an example. 3 sentences. Take it away. Here are some that we have. Another factor that increased tensions and eventually led to the American Revolution was the Proclamation of 1763. Good. So that would be yellow. The proclamation was an agreement made between the Indians and the British government that said the American colonists would not cross the Appalachian Mountains. Good, right? So you're explaining there, or you're giving the example. This angered the colonists as they felt that they had the right to expand since they fought the French for the land. Perfect. This would earn the point. This would for sure earn that point for part C. So that one was good. The third and final reason that increased tensions between Great Britain and the North American colonies was the confrontations that arose between these two. Yeah. For example, the Tea Party was the American colonies' protest against taxation. Good. This would be green. I would just make sure that you say the whole thing, the Boston Tea Party, not just the Tea Party, because you never know. Maybe there were other tea parties going on. This was part of a wave of resistance, which in turn financially weakened the East India Company. Yeah, I would also just add one last thing that maybe just ties it back to how it led to the revolution, right? A wave of resistance, which financially weakened the East India Company, maybe just add one last piece of a wave of resistance that rallied like patriotism in the colonies and in turn financially weakened, something like that. So you just kind of show that it kind of just helps rally up everyone. Good, right? So there you go. That would earn the point. One factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and North American colonies was the end of salutary neglect in the colonies. It's awesome that you guys are all doing different ones. For example, the passing of the Proclamation of 1763 showed that Britain was now trying to determine the colonists' right to land fought for in the 7 Years' War. Good. This increased tensions because the colonists believed they had a right to the land. Yeah, right. Or since they helped fight for it, since they helped, because when this one says, since they fought the French for the land, right? Because they fought the French for the land, just to kind of wrap that in together and show why a little bit better. But yeah, there you go. One factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and its North American colonies was the increased amount of publications in the colonies. Or it's not necessarily the increased amount, but the increased amount of patriotic or anti-British, or pro-revolution, something like that, just to be a little bit more specific. For example, you wouldn't need to write all those. I just kind of put them there. For example, Common Sense by Thomas Paine advocated for independence in the colonies. Okay, this spread the resistance movement throughout the 13 colonies. Yeah. A third factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and North American colonies was the ending of salutary neglect. The American colonies used laissez-faire from Great Britain and structured their society around it. This is a little bit confusing. So, if you're going to talk about the end of, right, so if you're going to talk about the end of salutary neglect, you really want to make sure that here you are giving a really specific key term. So here, laissez-faire is not going to really connect with that. So you'd want to, make sure that you're giving that specific example. So, for here, for example, so if you're choosing to talk about the end of salutary neglect, this would be an example of that. And that includes this key term here, Proclamation of 1763. So you'd want to make sure that you include a key term. By suddenly taking control of these colonies, people's lives were disrupted, which angered the colonists. Right. So you would want to then talk about, instead of that sentence, you could have for example, the intolerable acts, and then explain them or something like that. And then that last one, which angered the colonists, could still show why it's leading to war. All right, so we got a few more. Third factor. Okay, so we got two more. So, yeah, I think you guys are totally getting this, though, which is awesome. Third factor. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Third distinct factor that increased tensions between Great Britain and its North American colonies was the release of patriotic publications. All right. This one would be yellow. For example, Thomas Paine's Common Sense sold over 500,000 copies, a fifth of the colonial population, and argued for the separation of the colonies from the British government. That's awesome. You have tons of evidence in there, but that sounds really good. Popular publications galvanized support toward revolutionary ideas because many people were on the fence about independence. That's awesome. This is a good one. A third factor that increased tensions between the mother country and the colonies was the confrontations that occurred in North America. Good. For example, the Boston Massacre was an act of the colonies fighting for their representation. This marked colonial resistance against British control, especially the occupation of the British troops. Yeah, I would even add a little like, okay, so for this middle one, for example, the Boston Massacre was an act of the colonies fighting for their representation, but it turned violent, which, increased tensions, something like that, to just give a little bit more specific about the Boston Massacre. And then you can kind of combine these sentences. This event marked colonial resistance against British control, especially the occupation of British troops, which I don't know, increased tensions leading to the colonies fight for, the grammar is not correct, but that's okay. So, right. So like, there you go. So you can see so you guys just totally killed it. So you can see how you would answer that question. You have A, you have C, you have E, and then move on to part B, and move on to part C. You don't need to write any more than this. You can get the point in 3 sentences. It sounds like the brainstorming helped a ton. We're not going to necessarily write this one, but maybe we'll just brainstorm for this one. So I think, seems like you guys are definitely understanding that a lot more. So like this quiz question, so you would just go about it the same way. You have 13 minutes to answer all of it. So you would just brainstorm some answers and then go for it. Describe one specific strength or positive accomplishment of the federal government during the time of the Articles of Confederation. Describe one specific weakness of the Articles of Confederation. Just explain one aspect of the Constitution that was instituted by the framers to fix the weakness or failure that you identified in part B. Oh, okay, there you go. So you already did this one. Yeah, so, we can just kind of talk through, like, what are some things that you might say? What are some of the strengths of the Articles of Confederation? What are some things that you could include as like, yeah, that was good. Like, what are some positives? Northwest Ordinance. And what are some negatives? That would be failure to levy taxes, could be how it falls short. It organized the colonies in some way. Yeah, right. It binds them together, right? So that they don't go off on their own country. Ability for Congress to declare war, that would be a positive or negative. Weak national government, no direct. I don't think they could declare war, so that would be a negative. Weak central government, right? So, no direct tax, no interstate commerce, weakness to subdue colonial resistance, right? Unable to subdue colonial resistance. Congress had a little too much power, maintain the army and currency. Yeah, the currency issue was big. It allowed the states could kind of create their own currency. We had federal and state currency, which is not a good thing, right? Inflation. Yeah. So, just like this, you would think about all those things, just kind of brainstorm them. And then all you gotta do is choose one strength and talk about it, just like we did. Choose one weakness and talk about it. And then you're going to explain. So here, we didn't talk about this one. How did the Constitution fix one of these things? So one of these pieces, how did the Constitution fix it? How did the framers, what did they embed in the Constitution? Constitution gave more power to central government. balance of power, one currency, yep, federal, not state currency, national army, yeah, navy, standing army, demonstrated weakness of central government by Shays Rebellion. Yeah, so this would be here, like Shays Rebellion. Yeah, so you can then talk about any single one, right? You could say, well, the Constitution, you know, created like one federal currency, or you could talk about the powers that it gave to the federal government versus the state. You could talk about the federal government being able to levy taxes, anything like that. So, right. So you can see like the brainstorming piece is key, and you can brainstorm in, you know, a minute or two. Is this official College Board question? Yeah, this one, I think it's really similar to one that was on College Board. It's a little bit different. Can I talk about Washington's response to the Whiskey Rebellion? I off the top of my head right now, not well. If anyone knows what Washington's response to the Whiskey Rebellion was, please add that in, because I just like, I don't want to give you the wrong answer. That can be used as evidence for a stronger army. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so all right, so basically we'll just like wrap this up. He used overwhelming force, which was in contrast to Shays' Rebellion. Oh, okay, all right, good to know. Yeah, thank you, Jasper. So you know, you can see how this works and how you'll attack it, and you know, there are other questions. Like here's another example one where you've got document A, then you have document B, and then it's like using the documents above, briefly explain one major difference between the two interpretations. You know, briefly explain how someone supporting the first one could use, like, what's a piece of evidence they could use to be like, yeah, he's right, or what's a piece of evidence the second one could use to be like, no, he's right. So you'll see questions like that have documents like this or images. You know, it's not all going to look, they're not all going to look like this, where it's just like ABC. A lot of them will, but you'll usually have at least one, maybe two that are sourced, that have sources that are stimulus based. So there'll be some type of chart, image, document, anything, and then the questions will kind of ask almost like analysis based on that. I've seen ones of like charts of, I'm gonna move. I've seen ones that are charts of the like population. And what you're kind of doing is you're what was I gonna say? You're analyzing the population growth. So like maybe it's showing like number of immigrants coming to the United States, and then it'll ask you like what would have like explained that like spike or something like that. So that's the kind of charts you might see. A table that might show different like production numbers, some kind of data, and they might ask you a question about the context of that data, or you know, like what other evidence could help you answer that question, something like that. Do you think it'll ask you to explain similar historical events? It could. I mean, I don't think the question will be like straight up like synthesis, but it could ask you like what was something else going on in this time period that would have supported blank. I mean, all of them are going to be built around the historical skills, and the skills are comparison, causation, which includes like effects, and then CCOT, so changes in continuity. And so I'm not sure if they've totally taken out periodization. They may have. So it might ask you to explain why that was a turning point, but I think they've taken it out. So either way, like that's kind of what you'll see. So if we just pull up another screen here, if you just Google APUSH exam and go to the like College Board page, like this is the only thing that they're going to know. So Grace, the only thing is, so that you said they ask about women's roles a lot. They have in the past, but that it doesn't tell us anything about what the future questions will be like. Like there's no way for us to know what the questions will be on. So here's the exam format breakdown again. And so I'm just getting this from College Board. So let me make myself smaller so you can actually see this. Okay, so here's the exam format. So, you know, you've got the multiple choice is 40%. So then this is what they're telling you about the short answer questions. This is the only thing that you can for sure rely on. You really can't you can't make assumptions about anything else. Okay, so they're just as like caveat. So you have to write 3 questions. You have 40 minutes to do it. It's 20%. So you're going to be either asked to analyze interpretations or sources or something about history, or it's questions for you to demonstrate what you know, right? So that's what we did. That's mostly what we did. And this would look like the 2 documents. And you're like, what is this guy thinking? What's this guy thinking? Whatever. And then some of them are going to include those kinds of things: graphs, maps, charts, images. So the update for this year, which is kind of awesome, is just that you only have to write 3. You used to have to write 4, and that you get some choice here. So question 1, you have to write. It's going to be on anything from periods 3 to 8. Question 2, you have to write. It's going to be on anything from periods 3 to 8. So you don't have to, there's no choice here. Whatever those questions are, you have to answer them, even if you look at it and you're like, oh my God. And then here's where the choice is. Question 3 will be on something from periods 1 to 5. Question 4 will be on something from periods 6 to 9, and you'll get to choose one or the other. So you do have some choice there, and you can see that periods 1 and 2, you can get full credit on the short answer questions and never actually answer anything about that, right? If this question is about periods 1 or 2, and you're like, I don't want to do that, I'd rather do this one, then no problem. But there's really no way for you to know what the questions will be about. I think stick to the key concepts, and that's how you know. Just like we talked about last night, stick to those bigger themes, those bigger developments, and really think through causes, effects, changes, continuities. Like that's how the questions are going to be built. And so that's the best way that you can prepare for it, is just whatever topic you're learning about, you're reading about, you're reviewing, think about those major skills.